Hoş geldiniz. Avrupa Gününüz kutlu olsun. Bu sene de Avrupa Günü'nde yine beraberiz ve sizlerle birlikte olmaktan çok mutluyuz. Avrupa Birliği Türkiye Delegasyonu'nun Başkanı, Büyükelçi Ambasador Thomas Hans Ossowski'ye veriyorum şimdi sözü. Buyurun. Ambassador, please.
Hoş geldiniz. İyi akşamlar. Nasılsınız? İyi. So thank you for coming to share this important, beautiful moment with us. We do that once a year, you know, to celebrate the Europe Day. This year is a particular moment because we commemorate or we celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Observer-Diplomatik Declaration, which was the starting point of the European integration process. And it just came 5 years after the end of the Second World War in Europe. And you know how short 5 years are. And I would like to underline that we should still admire the courage and the vision of our forefathers in Europe, that they decided 5 years after this devastating and horrible war in Europe, which created so many suffering, not to punish the aggressor, but to come together and try to build a new Europe by integrating with each other, by sharing solidarities. I mean, that was the basic idea. You know, they started then with gold and steel, and then later moved on to economic relations, and the whole enterprise that evolved until today, where we are a kind of a political union already. But the vision of the forefathers was really that it is not by taking benefit from each other or by using the role as a victor over those who have been vanquished to extract all kind of reparations. But it was the whole idea of working together and engaging in each other in a positive sum game and creating something which is much more than the individual benefits of individual member states. So it was a great moment of European history, and it has established an era of unprecedented peace and stability and prosperity. I mean, the growth we have seen, the sustainable growth in Europe over all these decades, has very much to do with this integration process. But for a certain time, it only concerned the western part of the continent. You know, the eastern part was brutally occupied by the Soviet Union, and only after the fall of the Berlin Wall, it was possible to integrate these countries after they regained their independence and sovereignty, to integrate them in the European Union. And they were very eager to join because they saw the benefits of the European Union. And you know, now we have, for example, right now the Polish Council presidency. So it is with 27 member states already now a given that this European integration process covers the whole European continent. And Turkey is a candidate country. I know there are a lot of frustrations also here in Turkey that Turkey has been a candidate country for so long. And we started the accession negotiations with Turkey more than 20 years ago, but then they came to a standstill for political reasons. But we decided some time ago, and we did fulfill it with very concrete substance, to restart, not the negotiations, but to restart the relations between Turkey and the European Union. There had been for far too long a standstill in our relations. And I was very privileged and lucky that I arrived here in Ankara together with my family only 3 days after Foreign Minister Fidan attended the informal foreign ministers meeting in Brussels, as he attends today another informal foreign ministers meeting in Warsaw. And that is basically seen as the restart of the relations between Turkey and the European Union. And since then, we have established a roadmap based on a joint communication by the Commission with the High Representative of the time, based upon a strategic debate the European Council has conducted on Turkey in April last year. And so since then, many things have happened. The highlights were certainly the visit of the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Just at the beginning of her second mandate, Turkey was the first or second country she visited. And then we had more commissioners coming, we had the High Representative, Kaja Kallas, coming. And we restarted also a whole series of high-level dialogues, such as the high-level dialogue on trade, the high-level dialogue on economy. Very soon we will have the high-level dialogue on migration security. And next to that, we have also engaged in other fields. We have worked very closely with Turkey over the last months and years to get a common understanding how to prevent the circumvention of EU sanctions against Russia. We have been working on other issues, and so there was a very positive spirit, positive agenda. However, you know it, and I must underline it, since the arrest of Mayor Imamoglu, things have cooled down a bit. Because also in the strategic relations debate the European Council has conducted last year, the European leaders pointed out very clearly they want to re-engage with Turkey as a European country, as a candidate country, and Turkey has so much to bring to the table, you know. But there are certain conditionalities. One of these conditionalities was the progress on internal reform, and no backsliding on democratic rights, etc. So for the time being now, the European Union, and you have seen perhaps the parliamentary report, which was issued yesterday, the European Union is observing what is happening, because it's also difficult for us to evaluate. Because we also don't want to be on a high moral ground. We don't want to be judgmental. We want to be a good partner for Turkey, and we want also to bring that to the foreground here tonight with this reception and exhibition. But of course, we must be careful in the sense that we have shared values, and Turkey is subscribed to these values as a candidate country. I mean, no one forced Turkey wanted to be a candidate country, and Turkey has subscribed to these Copenhagen criteria, which are very much about rule of law, democracy, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, etc. And so we just ask, from the position of a partner, at eye to eye level, listen, live up to your commitments. We don't close any doors right now, but the Commissioner for Enlargement said we are recalibrating again our relations. And we are working, continue to work on a positive agenda. For example, on the visa issue, which comes up again and again, and I can't hear it anymore because, you know, the truth is, Turkey is the country which, after China, gets the highest number of Schengen visas. All these reports in the media are propaganda. It's not true that the European member states or Schengen states are closing down their doors and don't allow Turks into the Schengen states. That is totally wrong. The consulates are full with people. They are full with people. And member states are working very hard to get, you know, the visa processes accelerated. And we are working, by the way, very seriously also on the facilitation of the visa cascade, which will make it easier for Turkish citizens to get more quickly a multi-entry and long-term visa. So we are working very hard. But let me also emphasize and point out, Turkey could have had, for years already, free visa-free travel to the Schengen states. All the candidate countries to the European Union have free visa, no visa requirements. All the candidate countries, even Kosovo, which is not officially a candidate country, because they fulfilled all the benchmarks. And Turkey is the only candidate country to the European Union which is not fulfilling the benchmarks. And the benchmarks are the requirements. If you ask me about it, I can explain what are the benchmarks. But these are the requirements to allow 75 years, you know, the Roma-Schuman Declaration, 75 years of European cooperation have shown us one thing. What we protect today will inspire our shared future. Building on this vision, I'm delighted that with this exhibition
We will also produce a photo album, which you will see later, not tonight, but at a later stage. And produced by the delegation of the European Union to Turkey, in close cooperation with the embassies of the EU member states. This exhibition is more than a collection of pictures. It reflects the deep and enduring cultural ties between the EU, the member states, and Turkey, and I would say reflects the enduring cultural ties of Europe. Because Turkey is a European country. And as I said before in the press conference, we are very proud that a lot of European civilization was born here, in Anatolia, and on the Mediterranean.
Visit tonight with you on the occasion of Europe Day. And I would like to thank my dear friend Tomasz for crowning this special day with such a special exhibition paying tribute to our common cultural heritage. I think it's an excellent idea. Because, I mean, what unites us today in Europe, including Turkey and all the EU members, is not only our shared values and interests in terms of political, economic or social domains, but it's also our centuries-old common cultural heritage. And I would go even further and say that it is precisely this common heritage which helps us live in Europe together in peace and look towards the future with the same vision and aspirations. Because no matter how we call ourselves, we became what we are today by constantly interacting with each other throughout the centuries in this wide continent that we call Europe. And I think in other words, our true identities have long been shaped by what we learned from one another in terms of our traditions, practices, beliefs, rituals, and whatnot. And I think this is why in the very famous motto of the European Union, we are united in our diversity. Not only because we share the same ideas for the future, but because we come from the same past and we learn from each other. And today's, because we all have something from each other, the traces of which goes way back in history. And I believe this photo exhibition that we will see in the coming days shows some of those traces, examples of our common cultural heritage. Tells us that these lands have been home to so many civilizations that impacted all of us at the same time. I'm sure, of course, these pictures are, of course, wonderful from an artistic point of view. But I would ask all of you to look at them even in a deeper way and try to see beyond what meets the eye. Because in my mind, cultural heritage is not only about historic sites or ancient monuments. It is even more what the people who built them stood for in life, what they believed in, what they aspired for, feared from, or took pleasure in. I think that is also quite important for us to understand. So I'm trying to also train off my thought as well. But really, this is truly special what we are doing here. Showing this common heritage of ours between Turkey and all the European Union members. But I think it becomes all the more special when you come to think that all these photographs shows projects that are funded by the EU in order to contribute to protecting and promoting our common cultural heritage. And I could not have thought of a better way to really spend some of the EU funds. I know that, of course, the EU funds, especially those of the instrument for pre-accession assistance, are used in many diverse areas, ranging from education to environment, energy to digitalization, and I'm sure they're all very important and bringing us closer. But I'm a true believer that our cooperation in promoting our common cultural heritage deserves a special place in our collaboration. Because every project in that area, I think, raises awareness, both in Turkey and the rest of Europe, that deep down we are more common than otherwise. The millions of tourists coming to Turkey and visiting those common heritage sites, I think, share the same sense of belonging into something bigger and higher than their national identities. They learn through these projects how we start the march of humanity towards civilization 12,000 years ago in Göbekli Tepe, the 0 point of history, and it tells us our shared journey throughout history from there on. And I think it also helps us, of course, build strong ties between our scientific and academic communities, who, irrespective of their nationalities, work together in places like Ephesus, Sagalassos, Arslantepe, Çatalhöyük, and many other places that we will see in those photographs in a relentless effort to shed light to our past. So, I really thank you for this wonderful project. Let us unite. Let us protect what unites us and continue to work together in promoting them. So let me thank you once again for this project, to Ambassador Osowski, to entire EU delegation, of course our dear photographers, I'm sure they're somewhere here as well, and of course everyone who made this exhibition, but more importantly, the projects behind it possible. Thank you and happy New Year.
Fransızları, Büyükelçi Sayın Oskowski, Diplomat'ın değerli mensupları, kıymetli konuklar. Tüm Ankara halkı ve belediye meclisimiz adına sizleri en kalbi duygularımla selamlıyorum. Robert Schumann'ın Avrupa'da barışın tesisi için birleşik bir Avrupa fikrini ortaya koyduğu günün anısına her yıl kutlanan Avrupa Günü münasebetiyle düzenlenen bu programda sizlerle birlikte olmaktan büyük memnuniyet duyuyorum. Avrupa'da yüzyıllarca süren çatışma ve savaşların ardından Birleşik Avrupa idealine ulaşmak için kurulan Avrupa Birliği'ne üyelik Türkiye'nin stratejik amaçlarından biridir. Avrupa Komisyonu'nun 2024 yılı Türkiye raporunda ifade edildiği üzere Türkiye, Avrupa Birliği için kilit bir ortak ve bir aday ülkedir. Avrasya'da, Orta Doğu'da, Doğu Akdeniz'de istikrarlı ve güvenli bir ortam sağlanmasında vazgeçilmez rolü olan Türkiye ile işbirliğinde ve karşılıklı yarara dayalı bir ilişki geliştirilmesinde Avrupa Birliği'nin stratejik çıkarı bulunmaktadır. Bu bağlamda ülkemiz 1959 yılından beri uzunca bir süredir tam üye olma yolunda ilerlemektedir. Zaman zaman ortaya çıkan ve her iki tarafın da eksikliklerinden kaynaklanan sınamalara karşı hem Türkiye hem de bu Avrupa Birliği için bu üyeliğin büyük bir fırsat olduğunu düşünüyorum. Cumhuriyetimizin kurucusu Gazi Mustafa Kemal Atatürk'ün ortaya koyduğu muasır medeniyetler seviyesine ulaşma idealiyle uyumlu olan bu üyeliğin bir an önce gerçekleşmesi gerektiğine yürekten inanıyorum. Avrupa ruhunun da temeli olan evrensel değerler, demokrasi, insan hakları ve hukukun üstünlüğünün ülkemizde de tam manasıyla yerleşmesi açısından bu üyelik büyük önem arz etmektedir. Türkiye 4 milyona yakın sığınmacıya ev sahipliği yapıyor. Onların temel ihtiyaçlarını eğitim, sağlık, korunma, barınma ihtiyaçlarını karşılıyor ve sosyoekonomik destek sağlıyor. Türkiye'nin Avrupa Birliği üyesi olmasının avantajlarından faydalanmadan Avrupa Birliği adına bu yükü kaldırması sürdürülebilir değildir. Avrupa Birliği'nin 5. büyük ticaret ortağı olmasına ve adaylık statüsü çerçevesinde yakın sosyal, kültürel, bilimsel ve sportif bağları bulunmasına rağmen halkımızın Avrupa Birliği ülkelerine gitmede vize engeline takılması, aramızdaki anlaşmalara ve işbirliğimizin ruhuna ters düşmektedir ve bir an önce düzeltilmelidir. Yerel yönetimler bakımından da Avrupa'daki meslektaşlarımızla yakın temas halindeyiz. Ankara olarak Brüksel, Paris, Berlin ve Viyana gibi başkentlerle işbirliklerimizi devam ettiriyoruz. Ayrıca Avrupa Birliği Türkiye delegasyonu ile birçok ortak projeyi hayata geçiriyoruz. Bu bağlamda geçen yıl göreve başlayan Büyükelçi Oskowski ile yakın işbirliğimizde devam ettireceğiz. Bu vesileyle bir kez daha Avrupa Günü'nü kutluyor, başta Avrupa halkları olmak üzere tüm insanlık için daha sağlıklı, mutlu, barış ve adalet içerisinde yaşadığımız bir dünya diliyor. Hepinize en derin saygılarımı sunuyorum. İyi akşamlar.
Distinguished guests, dear colleagues, it is a great honor and a true pleasure for me to join you this evening as we celebrate the Europe Day. And I think this is indeed a very special day, as it symbolizes not only the founding of a remarkable political project, but also the hope, resilience and unity of a continent once divided by conflict. Because 75 years ago, on 9th of May 1950, the Schuman Declaration laid the foundation for what would then become the European Union, a bold vision that lasting peace could be achieved not through force, but through cooperation. It is that vision which then gave birth to the Union, built on not only on treaties and institutions, but also on trust, dialogue, and our shared commitment to values like democracy, human rights, and rule of law. Those values that remain as valid and vital today as they were then. Tomasz and I had the privilege of opening the Europe Day photographic exhibition just a while ago. And in my mind, that exhibition serves as a powerful reminder of our common cultural heritage that connects Turkey and Europe beyond politics and economics. And as I said in that opening speech, common heritage, of course, is profoundly important in forging a common future for all of us and understanding the true nature of our shared journey throughout history. That said, that is for that, what unites us today in political and economic terms is, of course, also of great relevance and significance, since we also share so much in common in terms of our political and economic values and interests, as well as security considerations. In fact, that has always been the case, as evident by the deep integration that we managed to realize between Turkey and EU on a wide range of issues, and Turkey's unrelenting quest for EU membership since early 1960s. But as you said, Tomasz, today, faced with ever more growing challenges, common risks and threats, I think this relationship has become even more important. I think indeed, at a time when the European security architecture is in the wake of a major transformation, if not a reconstitution, at a time when the foundations of the liberal international economic order built in the aftermath of the Second World War is tested very seriously. This is at a time when European Union and Turkey, sharing the same concerns and objectives for the future, must take a fresh look at each and every pillar of their relationship and do everything possible in order to fully realize the vast potential that this relationship holds. Or maybe in simple words, we are at a time when neither Turkey nor the EU can afford to deprive themselves of the synergy of their cooperation or miss the opportunities in this direction. Or even in more layman terms, I will simply say that we will be incomplete if we don't go in that direction. And I'm happy to assure you that Turkey is ready and willing to embark upon this next and possibly the most promising chapter of our long journey together. As President Erdogan repeatedly underlined, EU membership remains a strategic objective for Turkey, and we are committed to do whatever is required to turn this long aspiration into reality in a way that would be mutually beneficial for both sides. And of course, it takes two to tango, and we hope that the EU also show the same enthusiasm and commitment in taking our relationship to new heights and bringing it closer to its final destination. And I'm pleased to note that there are some early promising signs in that direction. For example, the reason why Minister Fidan couldn't join us today, because he was attending the EU Gymnich Foreign Ministers meeting in Warsaw, after a long gap of such encounters, I would say. And again, of course, the first high-level economic dialogue meeting within the last 6 years was recently held in Brussels, yielding high promises for a wider and deeper cooperation, both in terms of trade and investments. And again, in 2 days' time, President Erdogan will take part in yet another European leaders meeting to discuss the future of European security in the context of our efforts to bring the war in Ukraine to a just and durable end, of course, something that requires Turkey to play an instrumental role. And of course, we are hoping that this revitalized dialogue between Turkey and the EU on a wide range of issues will now be put on a more structured and sustainable footing, and then will lead to joint, concrete actions and steps that will allow Turkey and the EU to serve together as forces of stability and cooperation in an increasingly fragmented and unpredictable world, I would say. And I think in doing so, there is no doubt that we will strengthen each other in a mutual way. Turkey, for instance, will hopefully enhance the vision and influence of the EU as a global actor, enabling it to fully rise to the geostrategic challenges of our time and take the necessary actions that it is long expected to. But no doubt, the EU, on the other hand, will enable Turkey to fully realize our own potential and will make us even a more able force for positive change in our wider region. In short, we will be stronger together. It's as simple as that. And I think I might stop here, but I will go even further and say that the impact of our united stance goes beyond the confines of our bilateral relations, and it makes a truly global effect. And I will share an anecdote with you. I will take you back to 2002, to the EU summit, where Turkey's candidacy for EU membership was formally endorsed. I was there myself, and I remember the final conference, press conference, was attended by close to 1,000 journalists. But the important thing, the great majority of them were not from Turkey or the EU countries. They were from countries of Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, because they have seen that step at that time as a giant leap forward in the civilizational journey of humankind. And they wanted to believe that unity in diversity is truly possible on the basis of common values and principle, irrespective of ethnic or religious differences. So tonight, as we celebrate Europe Day, let us also remember and renew our commitment to fully realize our potential that the Turkey and the EU relations represent, not only for our own countries, but much beyond than that. And our success in seizing that opportunity, or in seizing the zeitgeist of the time, I think will definitely have decisive impact on generations to come. So let me conclude by wishing all of you once again a happy Europe Day, and with my hope and conviction that our best days, our best Europe days are still ahead of us. Thank you and happy Europe Day.